Happy Arts in Our Schools Month! My name is Rachel McGrain, and I am the Development Director of Arts Education in Maryland Schools, also known as AEMS. AEMS is committed to ensuring that all students in the state of Maryland have access to high-quality arts education by mobilizing power to communities through advocacy programs, professional and leadership programs, and resource building and sharing. This month, AEMS is celebrating Arts in Our Schools Month by elevating educators and advocates from around the state, challenging you to advocacy activities, and sharing resources. Every week, we're hosting a Facebook Live conversation with amazing artists, arts educators, education advocates, and policymakers. Please be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at ArtsEdMaryland and use the hashtags ArtsandMDSchools and We All Deserve Arts to follow along and join in. This week, we have a great panel of education advocates and hopefully policymakers who are in session right now, and we're hoping they'll be able to join us soon, to discuss how decisions are made on the state and local levels. If they are able to join us, we'll have State Senator Cory McRae and State Delegate Brooke Lierman, but we definitely have with us Coordinating Supervisor of Creative Arts Programs for Prince George's County Public Schools and AEMS Trustee Anita Lambert, as well as Principal Lois Stokes. They will introduce themselves in just a minute, but first I want to say that I'm so excited to welcome Nicholas Cohen, Executive Director of Maryland Citizens for the Arts, as my co-moderator for today's discussion. Nicholas, please introduce yourself to the audience by sharing your role in the arts education ecosystem, a little bit about MCA, and why it's important for folks in the arts education ecosystem to understand how decisions are made.
Well, thanks, Rachel. Great to be here, and thank you for having me. It's always an honor to work with all of you at AEMS, and just a shout out to the incredible work that all you do on staff at AEMS to make sure that every child in Maryland, or every student in Maryland, I should say, has a quality arts education. And boy, is that important. And, you know, it's like, I'm glad we're having this month to talk about arts in schools, but like, we need to make that right. That's an everyday advocacy piece. And I know that's why you're all here doing that work, and it takes a village. So happy to be here. Again, my name is Nicholas Cohen. I'm the Executive Director of Maryland Citizens for the Arts. We help advance public policy and legislation for the arts in Maryland, and that looks like helping to ensure that the Maryland State Arts Council each and every year receives a strong appropriation from the Maryland state government, so investment in the arts, basically utilizing state dollars to make sure that the arts are in the lives of all Marylanders. We also help convene information and events around the state, helping to champion the arts so that we all work as a collective to advance that idea. And of course, when the arts, capital A, I talk about that, none of this happens without incredible arts education, because if we can't offer arts programming if we're not educating the next generation of artists. We can't offer arts programming without an educated audience, so they know what the arts are and what they do, and also the importance of educating students holistically. And the arts do that very much so, whether it's enhancing their creativity, increasing joy, and I think even fun, let's say that. And that myself personally, in addition to being an advocate, I'm a musician, a bassoonist, and conjure bassoonist. So obviously I owe a lot of me being here to incredible arts educators and educators throughout my life. I am also an instructor at the Baltimore School for the Arts, teach bassoon, which again, I'm happy to be part of that, and then to be an educator myself, because I feel that's very important to give back as a musician and advocate. So, of course, today's conversation I think is really important because we're talking about decision makers, and I think people need to understand there's different decision makers and different levels in government that function and help move, especially something like education, which is a huge. I guess a glacier is the only thing I can think of right now. I mean, it's this huge thing that you maybe might see at the top, the tippy top of a glacier, but there's a lot under it that's moving it forward. And so it's really important to know when we're thinking about arts education that in order to make one decision, whether it's for curriculum or what have you, there's a lot of people that have to move that forward. And behind that, those people have hopefully been informed by advocates and stakeholders and community members. So community members, like hopefully the folks that are listening to this. And so everyone has a voice. That's what's great, I think, and I believe about our government is that people can have a voice. There's a democratic way to do it. And I think you should all feel empowered to do that. And so I think it's important then to know who those decision makers are, whether it's understanding who represents you on the federal level, but also I think more importantly, quite frankly, is who represents you at your state government, and then who in your counties are representing you, whether it's at your city government level, but also within your school district and systems. So you know who you can reach out to voice either concerns or support or questions, because these folks are here to help. And they're in service. I mean, they a lot of these folks do this because they want to serve and they want to improve our lives as constituents in Maryland. So it's really important to know that, and it's really important to feel empowered to reach out to these folks. I would say most like decision makers I've met, they don't bite. They're really nice. Even if they don't agree with you, I still find them to be good folks that want to communicate. And I'll say it that way. So I think always feel empowered in that sense. So I think it's my turn to then now introduce the stars of the show and have our wonderful panelists introduce themselves. So Principal Stokes, Ms. Lambert, if you could take a few minutes, please explain what your place is in the education ecosystem in Maryland, what your work looks like on a daily basis, and how your work influences your community. So I guess, and Ms. Principal Stokes, if you want to go first, and we'll hear from you.
Okay, so thank you for having me to be a part of this. As a principal, I've always been interested in the arts. And so when I received the call to be a part of the panel, I really wanted to be involved. I've been a principal for 15 years. I've been in education for 31 years. So as a teacher, just trying to reach all of the students and trying to find out what I can do to bring them into the whole learning piece has been a challenge, because everyone is just not always interested in just the academics. And so for me, going through school, I was always interested in dance, and I learned a lot from dance. One, discipline, how to study, how to practice, how to show commitment and passion. And so once I became a teacher, I put some of those skills right into play in the school. We did not have money in the budget as a teacher for them to pay me to have art dance classes or anything. So I volunteered that on my own, and the kids were really excited about it. And it was a way that I could really leverage some of the things that I wanted from them. And so when I became a principal, I did the same thing. I did some volunteering, and then the county did have money in the budget, and I could use my budget in a certain way. So I always put a little one aside to work with staff members who wanted to do some work with the arts, because I found that was another way of me bringing the children into the whole learning cycle. So if they were interested in dance or music or the arts, we could bring in the reading and the learning and the math. We could get all of that in, just surrounded by whatever interest they had in the arts. And so for the community, what we've done at Randallstown, we have probably just about any after school or before school program that you could imagine. Some of it is done by teachers who want to volunteer their time because we may not have enough money. And then the county does provide some money for us. And so the students are getting that. But what I'm finding is that having the arts in the school helps to build students' esteem. It gives them courage. It gives them confidence. And it really brings out the best in them. And I want to give an example. We have a student that had special needs at our school who was really struggling with reading, but he auditioned for the play that we were having, and it was unbelievable. Like, how did he do this? And on stage, oh my gosh, he was like phenomenal. And so, you know, that has helped to build him up amongst his peers where he was feeling insecure in the classroom reading, but he learned his lines and he got on stage, it was a totally different person. So I think that it's important that we look at, not just the reading and the writing and the math piece of it. We have to look at the arts, and the arts come in so many different forms. It's getting to know the children, building a relationship with them, and understanding who they are and how we can meet them where they are with their interests, because everybody has gifts. Finding out what they are, taking time to find out what they are, and helping to develop them. At the elementary level, we don't have a lot of arts programs. They usually get into that in middle school and in high school. And so for us, I think that we've done a pretty good job with tapping into the arts. And however we can make it happen, we just try to make it happen. And we've seen that when our kids go to middle schools to audition or to do other things, they are getting into some of the magnet programs. And that's what we really want them to do. We want them to be in an area that makes them feel good, an area where they can, like you said, Nicholas, you give back. I did the same thing. I'm finding that some of our students are doing the same thing, coming back, working with our elementary kids, with some of the after school arts programs, the dance programs. And it's just been, it's phenomenal. And including the performing, we decided to do plays, and the kids were writing scripts, putting a different twist on it to make it work for their community and their environment and what they experience. They're building the scenes, the scenery, they're doing it all. They're writing the songs and changing it around. And it's beautiful. It's just beautiful to see what really is in the children, where people don't think that they are capable of doing. They're doing it, and they're doing it very well. So I think it's important that we support the arts, and I'm here to advocate for them.
Great. Thank you, Principal Stokes. I appreciate that. And I do acknowledge, thanks, Delegate Brooke Lierman, for joining us. I know it's crazy times down in Annapolis, so it's great to see you. Just so you know, we're just doing some introductions, so you didn't miss much. But the Miss Lambert's going to take it up. But basically, we're just asking that take a few minutes, talk about your place in the education ecosystem, what your work looks like on a daily basis, and how your work influences community. So I'll hand it over to Miss Lambert, and then Delegate Lierman, you can go after that.
Hello, and thank you very much for this opportunity. My name again is Anita Lambert, and I have the privilege of serving Prince George's County Public Schools as the coordinating supervisor for creative arts programs, which is a fancy title. That means I serve the most amazing arts supervisors from every art form, including media arts. I have been a practicing musician and educator for more than 50 years with piano students when I was 10 years old. So the importance of the arts goes for generations, actually, for me, because that meant that I had to have some amazing arts teachers as well. The reporting structure, there's a arts officer who's my direct supervisor, who reports to the chief of academics. And because of this reporting structure, we really get direct contact in terms of curriculum and instruction. So I'm able to work vertically and horizontally. So I work with principals, leaderships, community partners, as well as teachers, parents, and students. So a day, there is no one way to describe a day in the life of a coordinating supervisor, except to say that whatever tasks or service needs to be provided, that's what I am tasked to do. We had a meeting today, and I have now been tasked with looking at data points across all of our arts disciplines, to share that data story and our data journey in Prince George's County, which is very timely because as a member of the Arts Board, we're looking at Arts Look Maryland in terms of our statewide arts platform. I have the privilege of working with county and systemic system partners who not only want special events, but they also want to provide opportunities for our students. One of the most important thing, I think, given the circumstances of our present time, our arts supervisors are working with student services to provide opportunities for students and teachers to share publicly how they are using the arts and their own agency in the arts to handle the stress of the past year and their anxiety about moving forward. And this project is called 500 Ways to Cope, and it's connecting everyone, not just arts teachers, but counselors, principals. And we just received notification today that the site will be linked to our Prince George's County site in April, so that this will be something dynamic and something that can help people, not only the ones who produce, but the ones who are coming after. So thank you for this opportunity to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Lambert. Wonderful to hear from you. And again, I'll pass it over to you, Delegate Lierman. Again, just a little bit about your place in the education ecosystem and what your work looks like on a daily basis and how it influences community.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. And a huge thank you, Rachel, Nicholas, for all you do. And Ms. Lambert and Ms. Stokes, it's really an honor to be on here with you. And I guess I should just say, I try to support folks like those who are on this call, right? My job is really to help you and to support you and your work because you're doing such important work for our students. I'm a state delegate. And that means that I'm trying to pass legislation, of course, at the statewide level to help promote the arts, to help make sure that we're funding the arts appropriately, to make sure that we're funding the arts in schools, through the blueprint process, but also on the local level. I try to make sure that I can be a support to the principals in my district, to the educators in my district, and to the nonprofit community in my district and the artists in my district, whether that's the AEMS or the Creative Alliance, or whether it's, just an individual artist or AEMS or anybody. So I try to be a networker and to get folks, who, maybe a family is interested in a summer program and I can introduce them to young audiences, or maybe it's, an artist is trying to figure out how to get a lawyer and I can introduce them to Maryland Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. Whatever it is, I try to be that connector and be a resource for people and try to uplift the work that folks like you all are doing. So a huge thank you. I'm here to help serve you and promote the great work that you're doing. Thank you for having me today, and thanks for all you do.
Thank you so much, Delegate Lierman and Anita and Principal Stokes. We're super excited to have you all here in this introduction. So most of you actually kind of addressed this question already, but I'm going to ask to go dig a little bit deeper. So some of your roles are more related to the arts than others. And so we want to talk specifically about your role in the arts education ecosystem. So we all have pieces in the education ecosystem, but specifically in the arts education ecosystem, how does your work influence arts education in Maryland? So like, what decisions are you making on a daily basis or through your work that specifically influence students' access to arts education? I'll leave it open, whoever wants to jump in first.
I'm happy to say at a broad level, since I'm sort of at the broadest level, I think the work that we're doing in the state legislature is to try to make sure that all students have equitable access to an arts education. We know that too many students for too long haven't had access to really important extracurriculars, right? Like arts. And we know that all data points to the importance of arts in success in life, in success in school. And so I think, from my perspective, when we were working on the blueprint, I met several times with AEMS board members and other folks about making sure that we were lifting up space and that we were going to provide adequate funding so that our schools could make sure that they had an art teacher, right? I mean, something really basic. And I'll never forget at a hearing that we had about the funding gap for Baltimore City Public Schools, and Chairwoman of Appropriations Committee, Delegate Maggie McIntosh, Dr. Sanalisis, who's just a champion, was talking about how we were going to have to cut schools and cut funding if we didn't get more, if we didn't have help from the state for this gap, which is, and that means we cut art, right? We can't cut math. And Maggie just sort of said, when you cut art, you cut the joy, right? We're cutting the joy and we're cutting the hope. And, it really stuck with me. And I think it moved everybody to really realize that we are, right? These are the places where kids are finding something out about themselves in a really unique and special way. My son was doing art yesterday, and I happened to be at home, and he was, they were drawing an eye and like putting a sphere, putting a picture inside this huge eye, and they were learning about these different kinds of artwork. And he loved it, right? And he was so excited about it. And in a way that, I hadn't actually seen before. And he was explaining it to me and describing what they were doing and why it mattered and where it came from and the artist who drew like this. And, it's really special to be able to see kids learn in that way and use a different part of their brain and their heart. And so, for us, I think we worked very hard in the blueprint to make sure there was adequate funding so that every school could hire art teachers.
I'd like to share that the arts don't exist in isolation or in a vacuum. So when we talk about academics, we're talking about the arts. When we talk about culinary, we're talking about the arts. When we talk about math, social studies, science, STEM, whatever you want to call it, we're talking about the arts. So my work influences in arts education around pursuing this vision that I've had all my life to help every student develop their creativity and their arts muscles, right? Through instruction that gives them what they need to succeed. So it is absolutely individualistic, but it's also, as you say, holistic. There's nothing more visual than a well-decorated table and a student in culinary arts presenting a plate to you that has clearly been thought out visually. That's an art muscle. Or how special our teachers have to be able to adapt and accommodate instruction to meet the needs of the students in front of them, right? So those art muscles have to live everywhere. And we have to help teachers develop their capacity to engage students at the place where they are, to take them where they need to go. It's not going to be where I ended up. It's going to be where they end up. So I think I used an example before of our very first guitar solo and ensemble with a student in high school, and I'd never met him. And he's just playing his guitar, but his pick broke. He reached into his case, picked up a pen, took the top off the pen, used the pen top as his pick, started over, and it was phenomenal. I'm thinking, that kid got an A, doesn't matter what he plays from this point on, because he demonstrated in that moment everything that we as arts educators have been trying to teach. So I guess there's no one size fits all, right? So the influences have to come within the collaborations of not living in a vacuum and allowing the arts to be seen as an isolated incident or a chance to, oh, let's just let the kids draw a little bit and that's enough. We're about more than that. And just like those muscles that I have not exercised for a year will atrophy and go away, we need to not allow that to happen with our arts educators and our students.
And I agree with both Anita and Brooke. It is important for the arts, for the children to experience the arts. And Brooke, you were talking about your child and seeing the joy and the fun in it. it's the joy and the fun. And Anita, you said it's in everything. It is in everything. It's the joy, it's the fun, it's the relevance of art. When I think about the drawing, think about math, how math goes in right along with that. When I think about music, there's the math, there's the writing, all of that. There's the history, there's the social studies. It all ties into the arts. And when you can find, if a student can find what is of interest to them and you build upon that, then you have them engaged for a lifetime and a commitment to whatever it is that they are interested in. You know, I think about the kids that are really, one kid when I was in elementary school, that goes way back, but when I was in elementary school, I had a friend who was in my class who struggled with reading. But when he came over to my house after school, he was reading the words on the back of the album cup, on the album sleeves. And I said to him, why is it that you can read the songs, but you can't read in the classroom? And it really is about making those connections with, you know, with what their interests are and getting them to move forward. And that's what I try to do with the elementary kids that I work with on a regular basis. It's tapping into their interests, and it's always some type of art. I don't care whether it's media, performing, you know, visual, whatever. There's always some type of art. We found during this pandemic where we've been working virtually, another student who has been struggling, he has a twin, has been struggling, one of them struggling with the academics, the other one was doing okay. We came into the virtual. Anything, any problem that anybody had, or if you're trying to do something differently with the virtual stuff, like I asked you guys to help me when I came on here, he was right there. This little kid was telling us what to do. I know who to turn to when I need help in design and things like that. They are there. And that does so much for their esteem. That does so much for their building that positive self-image. And if we can build positive self-image and build that esteem in kids, we're headed in the right direction when they become adults.
Well said.
And I just want to jump in for a second. Something that I'm hearing kind of across the board is really kind of getting back to this fundamental question of what is the purpose of education? So like when Brooke was sharing at the beginning, the comment made about, oh, we can't cut math, we're going to cut art. Why? Why is that? First of all, why does anything need to be cut, period? There should be enough funding for everything. But also, why is it that we place crunching numbers above developing that self-image and confidence, unlocking that lifelong joy and you know, wanting to learn? Why is it that we place that above unlocking the passion, the problem solving? Not saying you can't get that with math. I love math. But, you know, all these things that we were just saying about arts, it kind of gets, when we're thinking about decision making, where are our values? What do we actually want kids to get out of their education? And then we need to use that as the basis to figure out, okay, then how are we going to make these decisions? And I think that's something that is frequently lost when we're trying to, you know, get crumbs out of the pie instead of having the whole pie to work with. We're like, well, where do we put these little crumbs? So I'll hand it over to Nick now for the next question.
No, yeah, good point. I think we can't work at a deficit sort of mindset, right? How we have to be like out front of this, like every child deserves, especially in the quote unquote wealthiest country in the world, no child should be without a fully embraced arts education, and their cuts just shouldn't exist. In my opinion. So speaking of big bills and funding, Delegate Lierman, this one's going to be for you. So, you know, with the passage, the incredible passage of the blueprint bill veto override, which is amazing, you know, Maryland has truly taken really a monumental step forward towards education equity for Maryland students. So, you know, I think sometimes people that aren't maybe policy wonks, like you know, maybe Rachel and I, they don't understand how big this, like a bill like this, with the committee hearings and the meetings before the bill even got written. So, you know, I know you've been part of this for a long time. So could you give us some takeaways? And I know we don't have too much, you know, it's not, we don't have hours to go over it, but it's in maybe a little surmised couple sentences or so. What are some takeaways from start to finish with the experience of passing major legislation like Blueprint? Like what did it look like?
Yeah,
What did it take
sure.
to get us here?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Look, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future is a fundamental shift in how we're funding education, that, you know, how much we're funding education at, but also it's programmatic, right? It's not just about money. I mean, a huge piece of it is the funding, but it's also looking at programmatic changes in terms of our teachers, community schools, early childhood education, and college and career readiness. And so this all began actually with an adequacy study. I think that was done in like 2015 maybe. And there was a study on the adequacy of funding for Maryland public schools. And out of then we took that adequacy study and we passed a bill to create what became known as the Cohen Commission. It has a much longer name than that, but it was chaired by the great Rick Cohen, former chancellor of the University System of Maryland. And so the Cohen Commission then met. Originally, it was going to meet for I think it was 2 years, but we actually ended up extending it because they had the programmatic changes. But then where the rubber, you know, really met the road was in the funding. How are we going to fund these programmatic changes, and what was going to be the method for securing that additional revenue? And so we extended their time to meet so that they met another. So we thought we were going to be passing legislation in 2018. And we ended up passing it, the first bill in 2019, the second bill in 2020. So it ended up being a few bills all along the way. And so I think, you know, ultimately though, this was about, there's tons of buy-in, right? I mean, the Cohen Commission took so much information in from so many people, so many groups all around the state with varying perspectives, varying expertise, and it was incredibly transparent, right? It was all open. There were subcommittees that you could follow on different issues. So it was very, very involved. And we did that because we wanted to make sure that we got it right? We wanted to make sure that we could hear from everybody, and that when we were going to pass this bill, which is going to be something that will not be updated for quite a while, probably, that we got it as close to right as possible, at least, you know? And so, so it was a long, long process to pass the blueprint. And we were working on it along the way, of course, too. So I was on the appropriations committee for many years before I moved to the committee I'm on now. And so all along the way, we're getting updates on funding for our schools, and we were trying to plug holes, right? One year, city schools estimated, you know, it had a huge gap in funding that we had to meet. We also did sort of pre-Blueprint for Maryland's Future bills to help do some pilot programs on literacy and others that I helped work on. And there was also then a totally separate work being done by Strong Schools Maryland and teachers unions and education advocates and disability rights groups, and folks who were all working together to say, and civil rights groups who are all working together, the ACLU and others, to say, look, we have to work together to make sure that we can pass this legislation and any revenue bills that are going to be needed alongside this legislation to make sure we can fund it. So there was huge grassroots support by the end of this with a wonderful organization working with people in every county of the state. And, and in addition to the incredible amount of work going on to pass the bill. This was by far the biggest bill that we've passed in my time in the legislature, and frankly, in many people's times in the legislature, because it is, so much money and will cover such a long time, but also because it just, because of the huge programmatic shifts that we're looking at as well. So it's really exciting. I mean, we should all be really proud that we passed, that our state is doing this work and this really urgent work. So I'm certainly very proud to have been able to play some small role in its passage, and excited to be able to work with my principals around the state and educators around the state to implement it over the coming years. Thanks.
Thanks, Delegate. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you showed that that's really democracy in action. I think so many people involved in how a bill of this size gets thought up of, but then, you know, who's in the room, but then also engaging with stakeholders, people on the ground. I think it's a really a beautiful way of approaching something that's going to impact many young folks' lives. So, and it also takes a long time. I mean, that's, you know, 6-7 years of work.
Yeah.
And I saw those committees getting together, and those meetings were intense. So thank you. That's really great. I'll pass it over to Rachel for the next question.
Thanks, Nicholas, and thanks, Delegate Lierman. So this question is for Lois and Anita. This is a bit more on kind of the district level. So we just heard about, you know, the big overarching statewide legislation and some of those things. But once the money then comes in from the state level, and it goes to the districts, and then, you know, from central office to the schools. And so, and we also know that arts education is required by law. It is in the Code of Maryland annotated regulations. All kids need to have access to arts education. It's a graduation requirement. But even so, we know that arts aren't always funded at schools. And it often comes down to this: do we fund or not fund the arts? Are we going to do math? Are we going to do art? And so based on your experiences at the district and school levels, where is the root of that problem located? Like, why does that happen? And also, you know, if you have an experience, for example, of being able to balance and say, well, art is a priority in my school or in my district, how are we going to make it work? Like, what does that look like from your perspective?
Me?
So,
Okay, sorry.
it's okay. I could speak at the school level, and I don't have too much control over things. I receive a budget, and we also have phys ed, art.
You went on mute, Ms. Stokes.
Okay, sorry about that.
There you go.
Yeah, we have art teacher, we have music, we have phys ed, we have all of that. And all of the students get exposed to that, as well as instrumental music. That's a part of their weekly program. So all of the kids get that. That's, for me, that's general. And then it's up to me, like when it comes to the budget, how I'm spending our school budget. And so we do have an opportunity to, you know, spend it however we feel is best. So of course we try to get the kids what they need first, and, you know, like material resources. And then what I try to do is also allot some funding so that the kids could have before and after school the extracurricular activities. The county also has, they give us a budget for some extracurricular activities. All of the interests are not on there. They're not always available, but I can take from my budget to pay for some other things that the kids may be interested in. And so I try to do that as long as we have someone that could facilitate and lead the group, one of the staff members. And our staff members have been really good because, number one, they're working hard, and it's about balance, and it's social emotional as well. And so the teachers, with everything else that they have to do, they really enjoy working with the students at another level when it comes to the arts, because they get a chance to really get to know them in a different way. And so it benefits the kids, it benefits the staff members. But again, I'm limited. I'm at the school level. I get a certain budget. I utilize some of the budget to support the arts. And then the school system gives us a budget to support the arts as well. And then the kids have the general art on a weekly basis.
I'm indeed fortunate to work in Prince George's County because I work in a county that recognizes the importance of arts education, instruction, as well as the depth that arts integration adds, you know, to content instruction and school culture. So the concern I guess I have is not so much funding, although that's always an issue. I don't think you can ever have too many arts teachers. a lot of it is about time on task. So a visual arts lesson is impossible to teach in 20 minutes. You just can't do it, right? A media arts teacher has technology needs, so that might mean they need special space. Dance has to have specific flooring, which again is a different cost. So at central office level, we really work with principals and district leaders to articulate those various needs on the various levels. And in fact, I'm also fortunate that our leadership encourages us to work with those building administrators who may not necessarily know, or they have inherited a schedule or a way of doing business that they didn't know that there could be a different way of doing things. We have an instrumental music supervisor who has worked with schools to establish a pullout schedule so that the students could get the instrumental music as well as all of their other classes. So that's just, you know, one example. Or we have a dance supervisor who has built probably 8 new programs in the past 5 years, simply by going to principals and saying, you know, we offer dance education in Prince George's County, you know, can we talk about it? And establishing that collaboration, and then talk with the principal about what it takes to get there. And then she's had conversations on the other side. Okay, facilities managers, this school wants to have dance education. We've identified the space. This is what we need you to do so that we can put in the correct dance floor so the kids can be taught. So it's about that collaboration, I guess is the word for the day, and that is supported by that creative spirit. So we're not always able to change in the moment, but I believe we're planting seeds for collaborative growth. And I think that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you brought up scheduling, because that's an issue that I've personally experienced as an educator, and I've heard from so many people, because like you were mentioning with the facilities and the materials, especially for, say, instrumental music, scheduling is so important. And I think that's a place where arts administrators and folks at central office and fine arts supervisors are really, you know, our biggest advocates, because they're the ones that are able to go and talk to those principals and say, here's how you can make it work. So you might have somebody who wants to make it work, but they don't know how. And then having those advocates within the school system to say, here's how we can work together and make it happen is so important. All right, Nicholas.
Great. Well, you know, as we're hearing, you know, you all operate at different levels of government. But again, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's important for those listening to understand, you know, how to engage with you all, right? And so I guess the question is for all of you to answer as you'd like. But so that what makes for a good meeting? So as a constituent wanting to meet with you, what do you look for when someone reaches out? What makes a good meeting, and what information should they provide that helps guide your actions ultimately?
So I'm happy to start. I think, you know, when you come in and talk with us, or you log on to Zoom and talk with us, as the case may be these days, I think the first thing is that it's helpful to be grounded. Talk to us sometimes like we don't know anything about the subject, right? Don't presume that we know what you're talking about, I guess is what I would say first and foremost. So if you're talking about a bill that you want us to support, for instance, come in and say, I'm here to, you know, tell us what bill it is. You know, this is HB 314 or SB 270. This is a bill brought by, you know, this sponsor or that sponsor. Here's what the bill will do. Then we're able to sort of think, okay, now I know what bill they're talking about, or okay, I can look up this bill while we're talking. So I have a little bit of an understanding of where things are. If it's an issue going on in the district, you know, I want you to know that there's this issue that's happening at a school in your district where we're not being able, you know, there's no arts teacher, you know, probably then we're going to ask, have you spoken to the principal? How do you know this is true? We want to do some fact finding and just sort of understand what is, where we are in the process of everything. And for me, the reason I'm doing that is because I want to figure out how I can help, right? Like I want to figure out what my role will be to try to figure out the best use of my time and your time, so that I can be an advocate. And I know, and your time is precious and my time is, and I want to make sure that we're all ending up on the same page. And then if you have an ask, it's really important to make that ask, right? It's important to say, here's the, if it's a bill again, here's the bill, here's what it does. Can you support the bill? Yes, I'll support that bill. Can you, will you vote for it on the House floor? Yes, it's not in my committee, but I'll vote for it. Or is it in your committee? Or, what do you think? So I think it's important to have an ask. And I think it's also important to know a little bit about, I should say, I guess it's fair to ask, how can you help, right? Because sometimes people don't know what their state delegates versus their city council folks or their county council folks can do, right? And I don't expect everybody to know my job responsibilities or where I can be most effective. So, I think you can say, here's the problem. Do you think that there's something you could do to help us solve X or Y or Z? Somebody came to me recently because they had a building in tax sale. I can't get their building out of tax sale, right? Unfortunately, I wish I had that power. But what I can do is contact the local government and help figure out how it got into tax sale, how much it's going to cost to get it out of tax sale, whether we can help come up with a payment plan to get it out of tax sale, right? So there are steps that we can take if we think creatively together to move forward on that. And it may be that, all that I can contribute to a situation is connecting you to somebody else who I think will have the ability to help. But, certainly I'm going to try to do a warm handoff and make sure we do that. So have the information, have an ask, and be open-minded about how the person you're reaching out to can help.
Thank you, Delegate, because you captured the other C. We've got creativity, we have collaboration, but then we have to be honest about the ask. We have to be honest about the what we are meeting for. I guess it's actually another part of the creative C. My father used to say, not every nail gets the same kind of hammer. So if you are contacting me, I personally wanted to be about a vision, a thought, information. How can I help you help your kids succeed? Be it there's a leak in the dance room and we can't seem to figure out how to get it taken care of. Or it could be, my child auditioned for this program and didn't get in and I don't understand why. At least be totally transparent as to what your needs are. And then I can reach into my toolkit, if you will, of creative responses and figure out, this is the best person to connect you to. I know exactly who is responsible for facilities, who can help you figure that out. Or I know exactly which supervisor I can reach out to to connect you with, who can talk with you individually about your child's audition and things that they can do to improve their skills. So yeah, transparency also comes to mind. It's not another C, but transparency, because quite often in this digital day and age, I will get an email and the very first topic sentence sounds like something that I would be interested in, or we as arts leaders would be interested in. But if I read further, it's a sale. It's, I want you to buy this because I think this is my best product, or I want you to have this in the school system because I think this is good for the kids. So transparency is also very, very, very important, because not everybody that emails me with a question wants to buy something, but don't email me wanting me to buy something under the pretext of something else.
So I'm going to agree with both ladies and just say that at the school level, a good meeting for me, first of all, what is important is that I have established relationships with the staff in the community so that they know that they can bring concerns, ideas, whatever to me. And what is important is that they communicate it by saying exactly what it is, being transparent. If it's an ask, ask. And then we can work together, we can collaborate. Just like you said, Anita, if there are certain things that are going on, I can, I may have to make contacts with people, but we can work through things. And what I often say to people that come to me is, help me to help you. So you have to help me to be able to help you. And so you have to be clear with what it is that you're looking for. Be honest. Your approach, I can meet anyone in how they approach because different people show up differently. And so sometimes it may be a calm down, but being a good listener, first of all, and hearing what they have to say, and then just being able to dig into it. So just like you said, that communication, collaboration, being transparent and being honest about things, I think really makes for a good meeting.
Yeah, thank you all. That's really great advice. I think if anything, coming prepared and everything you all just said, I totally think that I've seen that be powerful tools going to decision makers. And I always say, show that sense of not just putting everything, the onus isn't always on that person opposite you. You want to work with them. And if you can support them too, offer. Because if you can show that you can be a helpful resource to them, they will, I feel like decision makers enjoy that because you all are doing a heck of a lot of work and you need help too. So I think as we all work together, yeah, right. That's
I will say often, people who come to me and ask for help or ask for, advocacy on something, I'm making mental notes to think, okay, someday somebody's going to need something and this person has this specialized skill set and I'm going to want to send it, somebody else to this person. So it's, which is great. Yeah. No, great point, Nick.
Yeah. Cool. All right,
Awesome.
Rachel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna wrap it up with one final question. We'll do a quick go around, maybe like 1 minute each. So we just discussed what each of you are doing to support your constituents and arts educators and folks in the arts education ecosystem. What can the people listening to this today, what can just the average community member, maybe parent, family member, neighbor, what can they do to support arts education in Maryland?
So for me at the school level, it's about communicating. Like, just feel free to go to the schools and ask for what you want. Just say what you want. And, if you have, some justification, you can explain why it's important to you. I think that is very important too, because it helps to build the understanding and puts the relevance in what it is that you're asking for. So I just say, just go to the schools and just ask for it. That's the school level.
Well, I think the same thing at the central office level. And I think there's a third C, communication, which I didn't say, but that extends. I say, talk to your students, talk to the kids. When you're in the grocery store and you hear that kid singing to something, talk to them. Why is that impactful for them? Why is that important for them? And then go out as the adult advocate for all kids, figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah, great points. I would also just add that don't wait until you need something to reach out to your delegates and council people. Get to know them now. I mean, they have email lists that you should sign up for. Go to their website, sign up for their emails. If you can't find them, just reach out to them and email them and say, hi, I'm your constituent. I'd like to know you. Can you put me on your email list? Follow their website, see when their events are. Maybe they're doing meet and greets, maybe they're doing fundraisers, whatever it is. just try to find a way to get to know the people who represent you. Because then you'll be building a relationship with them before you need something and before you have an ask. And so when you do have an ask, or when you do need something, or you want to advocate on an issue, it's perfectly natural then to say, oh, hi, delegate, or hi, council member. I just wanted to follow up. There's this issue that I'm really involved in, X or Y, and I'd love to have your perspective or your help or your guidance or your support on this. And after that, I would say follow up. I think it's really important to follow up after you work together on something. Keep in touch with them. Just make sure that that they know that you're still around. And so I love hearing from people that I've worked with over the years. Maybe it's even just a, hey, just checking in, haven't talked to you for a while. Especially now, I mean, I haven't seen so many people, right, in the past year. Every once in a while, I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to that person in so long, but it's just because last year it was sort of like we just didn't see people in the normal way that we would. And even this session, I'm not seeing, the normal people who come through Annapolis. And so it's a strange time. And I just think it's always great to just reach out personally and start building a relationship with people.
Brooke, do you think that state legislators also would like to get invited to things like student performances?
Oh yeah, totally. Invite us. Yes, absolutely. I think sometimes only council members get invited to things like that. I'm always sort of like, what about us? We represent you too. So, we can't always go, but look, I mean, I've loved the high school graduations I've gone to, have been so meaningful. It's been really fun. A school asked me to be the 8th grade speaker, the graduation speaker at the 8th grade graduation ones, which I was thrilled to do, right? I mean, we love meeting people, right? And we want to be out there for you. That's why we ran to do this, or at least it's why I ran to do this, right? I want to be out there with folks because then we're more accessible. And I just, I think it's the best job in the world, getting to work in government and work with people, because although we see all the challenges so acutely, we also get to see all the great stuff that's happening in our communities and at our schools. And that's really, right, what keeps us going. So please put us on your invite lists.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all so much. Thank you to Nicholas for co-moderating the panel with me tonight. Thanks to all of our wonderful panelists. And thanks to everybody who attended and supported this event. So this is the third of 4 live Facebook panel discussions. We have our last one next week. So we'll be back same time, same place, Facebook Live at 4:30 next Tuesday, the 23rd, to hear from some education advocates about how to influence change. So very connected to this conversation. We also encourage everybody to follow AEMS on social media. This week, the whole theme of this week is about decision making, and so we'll be sharing some more resources. We have an advocacy activity for you all on Thursday. There will be a blog post on Friday, so lots going on social media, so please follow us. And that's a wrap. Thank you all so much.